the ongoing series on molecules of life, I will be discussing configuration of D-glucose, that is Fischer's proof. In my last lecture, we had discussed the open chain structure of glucose, and we know that glucose has 6 carbons arranged in a straight chain. It also has an aldehyde group and it has 5 hydroxyl groups. We know that the molecular formula of glucose is C6H12O6. As we've already discussed in our last lecture, these 6 atoms are arranged in a straight chain. It has an aldehyde group which is given the lowest possible number, and it has 5 hydroxyl groups. We even discussed the relative configuration of glucose, and we found that it has configuration capital D, and this capital D configuration is given to glucose when its structure is compared with glyceraldehyde. And we find that if the OH is on the right hand side on the highest numbered asymmetric carbon, that structure is assigned configuration capital D. Now, as you can see on your screens, you can see an image of glucose in which only OH is shown at the highest numbered asymmetric center, which is the 5th carbon, and in this we find that the OH is on the right hand side, and this orientation was given when the structure of glucose was compared with that of glyceraldehyde, that is D-glyceraldehyde. But when we look at the structure, now we can see, now we know that what is the orientation of these groups what is the orientation of OH at this carbon, at the 2nd carbon, 3rd carbon and 4th carbon. But in 1888, this was not known as to what is the configuration of the groups, that is OH and H, at the 2nd, 3rd and 4th carbon. For this, today we shall be discussing Fischer's projections, that is Fischer's proof, as to how did Fischer proved in 1888, and then he assigned configuration at each chiral carbon. So imagine, he was such a genius. And for his work on purines and sugars, Hermann Emil Fischer was awarded Nobel Prize in 1902. And he elucidated the structure of glucose on the basis of very little information which was available to him in 1888. At that time, imagine in 1888, there was no information available about how he could elucidate the structure of a molecule, because at that time no modern techniques of spectroscopy and X-ray diffraction were known. Neither in 1888 there was any concept of absolute configuration. Only Kahn, Ingold and Prelog gave rules for absolute configuration, and very later on we came to know what is absolute configuration, that is assigning configuration to each chiral carbon on the basis of Kahn, Ingold and Prelog rules. So as these methods of elucidation of structure with help of spectroscopy were not available, there was no concept of absolute configuration, then Fischer realized that he would not be able to differentiate between enantiomeric configurations. So what he did now was he used relative configurations. That is, I have already said in the beginning of the lecture that he assigned arbitrarily D-glucose to the D family. Now what do we mean by this? When I say plus glucose or small d glucose, it means that this glucose molecule is dextrorotatory. That is, it will rotate the path of plane polarized light in right hand direction. And when we say it was put in the D family, that means when the structure of glucose was compared to that of D-glyceraldehyde, which was the simplest aldotriose, which was optically active, he found that the OH was on the right hand side, so it was assigned configuration D. And all those monosaccharides which have monosaccharides which can be aldohexoses or which can be ketohexoses, or they can be any aldoses, they can be trialdoses, tetraoses, pentoses, hexoses, they are put into the D family if the OH is on the right hand side at the highest asymmetric carbon, and they are put in the L family if the OH is on the left hand side at the highest numbered asymmetric carbon. Now see, as luck would have it, luckily Fisher's guess turned out to be correct. And as Beit in 1951, using a special technique of X-ray diffraction, was able to show conclusively that dextrorotatory tartaric acid, which had L configuration according to Fisher, had the absolute configuration R. And imagine if this was not correct, the study of stereochemistry would have been upside down. That means Fisher was such a genius that is on guesswork and on some facts he was able to give configurations to the D family and the members of the L family. So as you can see on your screens now, structures of tartaric acid. The first tartaric acid is dextrorotatory as indicated by plus. And now if this structure, we compare this structure with structure of glyceraldehyde, what do we find? That at the highest numbered asymmetric carbon, that is this carbon is asymmetric, and then this third carbon is also asymmetric. On the highest numbered asymmetric carbon, the OH is on the left hand side. Since it is on the left hand side, it has been assigned configuration capital L. In the other structure, we find that the OH is on the right hand side, and since this OH is on the right hand side at the highest numbered asymmetric carbon, this was given relative configuration capital D. Now according to Kahn, Ingold and Prelog rules, if we give assignment to, we assign configuration to each chiral carbon, we find that each chiral carbon in the first case has R configuration, and in the second case each chiral carbon has S configuration. I have discussed this R and S configuration in great details in one of my previous lectures, to which you can refer to. That is, the configuration was assigned on the basis of Kahn, Ingold and Prelog rules. That is, the priority was given to groups on the basis of the atomic number of the atom which was directly attached to the chiral carbon, and then the group having lowest priority is brought to the bottom, and then we look at the molecule. That is, if our eye travels in clockwise direction from group having highest priority to lowest priority, the molecule is assigned configuration R. This is just the summary of RS configuration. This has been discussed in great details in my previous lectures. So what do we interpret from this? This meant that the original arbitrary assignment of configuration of the plus and the minus D-glyceraldehyde was also correct. Why was this so? See, in earlier, when we are talking of the relative configurations in which glyceraldehyde was taken as an arbitrary standard, Fisher had drawn the structure of glyceraldehyde as Fisher projection. And when we look into the Fisher projection, what we find that the longest carbon chain is taken as the vertical chain with the highest oxidized end, that is the CHO group at the top. And he found that this molecule was levorotatory. And when he drew the structure of a molecule which was levorotatory, he found that the OH was on the left hand side. So he assigned it configuration capital L. That means L was derived from a word that is levo, which means left. Similarly, the other structure was, the other molecule of glyceraldehyde was dextrorotatory, and in this OH was on the right hand side. So dextro means right. So he assigned this molecule configuration capital D. Now later on, when they came to know the configurations, the Kahn, Ingold and Prelog rules, and the assignment, that is absolute configuration, was assigned to these two molecules, it was found that this first molecule, that is first structure, had S configuration, and the second structure had R configuration. So that means the structure of glyceraldehyde to which Fischer had assigned structure L, which means levo, which was L, that is the OH is on the left hand side, in fact had configuration S, and S stands for sinister, which means left hand side. And then the structure which was having D configuration in Fischer's projection, in Kahn, Ingold rules, in modern, the technology which we use, the Norman system, the modern system of nomenclature which we use, it has configuration R. But for the sake of convenience, this system of nomenclature, that is the older system, that is the DL system of nomenclature, is still used in carbohydrate and amino acid chemistry. So what do we now interpret from this? It meant that the configurations of all the compounds that had been related to one enantiomer or the other enantiomer of glyceraldehyde were now known with certainty and were now absolute configurations. So now there was no ambiguity. Like when we say that the molecule is having, a molecule of glucose is having configuration capital D, and this configuration to glucose has been assigned that with when it was, its structure was compared with glyceraldehyde, and they found that, Fischer found that the OH on the highest numbered carbon was on the right hand side. So to D-glyceraldehyde or to positive glyceraldehyde, which was dextrorotatory, he assigned configuration D. And now since it has been established by taking the example of glyceraldehyde that when we are talking of capital D, that is the older configuration, it means the same thing in the new system, which is the RS system, which is the CIP system. So capital D and capital R are meaning the same thing. So that means now there is no ambiguity. We can call glucose as giving it assignment, as giving it configuration capital D. So now we can conclude therefore plus glucose, which is dextrorotatory, has been rightly assigned configuration capital D, right? But now imagine the geniusness of Fischer, that just by knowing the orientation of OH at the highest numbered asymmetric carbon without having any knowledge of absolute configuration, without having access to modern techniques of spectroscopy, he was able to find out or to assign configuration at each chiral carbon. And on what basis? What was available to him? Look at the brains at that time. And no doubt because Fischer had heard the lectures of Kekulé, and if you go look into the history, life history of Fischer, you will find that he has worked on purines, he had worked on carbohydrates, amino acids, he had done this Kiliani-Fischer synthesis on dyes. So he had worked on versatile topics. So in fact he was a genius. And now when he had to assign configuration to the molecule of glucose or to the other molecules also, mannose, glucose, arabinose, what was available to him? Very little knowledge was available to him. The theory of stereoisomerism was available to him, which was given by Wantoff and Leblanc. Wantoff and Leblanc had said that if the carbon is sp3 hybridized, it will have tetrahedral structure. And if it has tetrahedral structures and the four groups attached to the carbon are different, that molecule will be chiral. Now, what do we mean by saying it will be chiral? It will be non-superimposable on its mirror image. So he knew that if a carbon atom is attached to 4 different groups, it is going to be chiral and it is going to be non-superimposable on its mirror image. It will be either dextrorotatory or it will be levorotatory, it will show optical activity. Then he had an idea about roof degradation. What is roof degradation? In this we convert a higher monosaccharide into a lower monosaccharide. For example, we can convert glucose to arabinose, right? So this is one method, that is going from up the series, that is we are decreasing the carbon atom in the carbon chain. Next, he knew that if he would oxidize monosaccharides, especially aldoses, he would get aldonic acids or alderic acids. This would depend on the type of oxidizing agent that he was using. If bromine water is used an oxidizing agent, or we say Tollens reagent is used, Fellings is used, Benedict's is used, then they were getting aldonic acid. That is, only the aldehydic group was being oxidized to a carboxylic group. But when a strong oxidizing agent like concentrated nitric acid was used, what was found that both the groups, that is the aldehydic group as well as the primary alcoholic group, were being oxidized. So he was getting a dicarboxylic acid, which was alderic acids. So we've given the general names here. And then, of course, there was Kiliani-Fischer synthesis. Kiliani and Fischer together had developed a synthesis by which a lower monosaccharide could be converted into higher one. For example, we can convert arabinose to glucose and mannose. So he had a concept, that is, chain lengthening was happening here, and in the process a new chiral center is also generated. Therefore we say that we get 2 isomers, that is glucose and mannose, that is 2 epimers. Now, and then of course he had knowledge about aldohexoses and aldopentoses, that is, he had knowledge about glucose, mannose, arabinose, ribose. But he had knowledge, he knew the general structure, but he did not know the configuration at each chiral carbon. The configuration, that is the orientation of the OH, only at the highest chiral carbon was known. And now the work in front of him was, the challenge in front of him was to assign configuration at each chiral carbon. So how did he go about it? So he said, since glucose, now today we'll be discussing the structure of glucose, he proposed the structure of configuration of glucose, which is also known as Fischer's proof. Now he said, what was his argument? He said his argument was that glucose is a molecule, that is, it is a aldohexose, which is having 6 carbon atoms in it. Now, since it is having 6 carbon atoms in it, that means it will have 4 asymmetric carbon atoms. And that means now we have to find out what will be the total number of stereoisomers. You know the formula is that 2 to the power of n, where n is the number of stereoisomers. Now, since aldohexoses have 4 chiral carbons, that means the total number of stereoisomers possible would be 16, and one of them is going to be glucose. So when we say 16 stereoisomers of aldohexoses, what do we mean? We mean 8 pairs of enantiomers. That is, 8 of them will be having configuration capital D, and other 8 would be having configuration capital L. So he had now what he did was, he arbitrarily decided to limit his attention to only 8 structures having D configuration. And his logic behind this was that since the carbohydrates which occur in nature generally have D configuration. So he took only the D structures. Now, as you can see on your screens, I have shown you different pairs. Like we have allos. Here I have shown you the complete structure with configuration at each chiral carbon. But just remember, this configuration was not known in 1888 when Fischer started his work. So the first structure is that of D-allose, second is D-altrose, third is glucose, fourth is mannose. Then we have gulose, iodose, galactose and tellose. So the structures were not known, and out of these 8 structures he had to find out which was the structure of glucose. Imagine, it was such a difficult task. But now supposing you have to memorize the exact sequence of monosaccharides, the following sentence is very useful. You can memorize the sentence which says, all alterists gladly make gum in gallon tanks. Gallon, you know, is the measure of liquids. That is, we say 1 gallon of petrol or 1 gallon of diesel. Now we have to look into the first alphabets of this sentence. In all, A stands for allose, alterist, A stands for alterose, gladly, G stands for glucose, in make, M stands for mannose, in gum, G stands for gulose, in I stands for iodose, G stands for galactose, and T stands for tellose. So you just have to memorize the sentence, all alterists gladly make gum in gallon tanks, and you can memorize the correct sequence of monosaccharides as to what is the correct sequence when we are doing. Now the question is, which of these aldoses among the 8 D aldoses is glucose? Now, as I've already said, Fischer could not work with the absolute configuration. He had no knowledge at that time about the absolute configuration. No techniques, modern techniques of spectroscopy were available. So he assumed that naturally occurring glucose was having configuration capital D. So which is shown on your screens, that OH is on the right hand side at the highest numbered asymmetric carbon. And now he had to work out what will be the position of OH on these 3 chiral carbons, second, third and fourth, whether the OH will be on the right hand side or the OH will be on the left hand side. So for this, Fischer's proof depended partially on relationship between plus glucose, that is, and an pentose which was arabinose, right? And we know now arabinose is an example of aldopentose, and we know aldopentoses have 3 chiral carbons. As aldopentoses have 3 chiral carbons, that means the number of stereoisomers which are possible will be 2 to the power of n, that is 2 to the power of 3. That means 2 into 2 into 2, 8 stereoisomers. 8 stereoisomers means 4 pairs of enantiomers. Now, since 4 pair of enantiomers would mean that it will have 4L and 4D, right? Now, for the sake of convenience again, he retained only 4 3D configurations out of 8. Which, as you can see on your screens, then the configurations of these structures were not known, that is 9, 10, 11 and 12. So in order to maintain my continuity in my lecture and that you understand what is what, how do we proceed with establishing the Fischer's proof, we'll stop here and then we can discuss all this in our next lecture. Thank you.